Hey everyone, welcome back to the Fosse Verdon After Show here on AfterBuzz TV. This week we're going to talk all about the heart attack, we're going to talk about the relationship drama, and we're going to talk about Fosse thinking of himself kind of like Lenny Bruce. We're going to get all into it. Just wait a second.
You're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
Hey everyone, welcome back for another week here at AfterBuzz discussing the Fosse Verdon. I was going to say the Fosse Verdon After Show, but we are the Fosse Verdon After Show. Talking about the Fosse Verdon show on FX, this wonderful show with these amazing actors. Every single week, Sam Rockwell, Michelle Williams, I'm just like bowing down to them.
Yeah.
They're amazing.
Michelle's getting better every week, I reckon. She's just incredible. I never used to love her back in the day, but she's grown on me in this series for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I've always loved her, but my goodness.
Yeah, she's amazing. Guys, let me introduce you to my amazing panel of these lovely ladies here in studio with me today. On the far left over here, we have our resident dance expert and Chicago expert. It's Kim Davey.
It is indeed. Hi, everyone. Kim Davey live from New Zealand, now in America. Excited to discuss theatre and Fosse.
Ooh. And then next to Kim, we have our resident comedian here on the panel, making things a little lighter in the darker times, just like Lenny Bruce. It is Amy Maestri.
I hope I don't have the same ending as Lenny Bruce, but I'll take it until then. Couple of arrests, I'm good.
It's dark.
Awesome. And I will be your host, Briana Phipps. I have loved Broadway ever since I was a kid. Cabaret is my favorite show of all time, so obviously I love Fosse and what he has done for artists. We'll say that. Watching the show has changed my interpretation of him a little bit.
Just a tad.
Learning new things every week.
But I love seeing the Chicago Tonight with the fingers and all the moves coming back. I know we'll get to those. Very excited.
And we're going to talk all about what happened with Bran and Gwen this episode, as well as Nicole and having her age a million years. We're going to talk about it in a second. We're also going to talk about Fosse overworking himself, his heart attack, some stuff going on with him and Anne. We're also going to talk about those flashbacks as well as that dream sequence where he kind of is Lenny Bruce. We're going to have our news and gossip section where Miss Kim over here will give us some tidbits. Amy's going to fill us in on our special segment Fosse Facts, where she's going to give us some factual stuff about what happened with Bob Fosse in correlation with this episode. We also have our predictions at the very end, so you're not going to want to tune away. But let's start at the very beginning, when now I'm almost wanting to sing Sound of Music.
I was going to say, very good place to start.
Kim, what was your overall thoughts on this episode?
I really loved the creative elements of the flashbacks and the Lenny Bruce and the comedy show. That was artistically very interesting to watch. I enjoyed it. I think it's gone from a creative craziness to really a watchable show now. So it's a super easy to follow and it's understandable now, which I'm really enjoying because I get it. For the slow people, I get it. I think I'm liking Bob a little more and actually being able to, understand why he is the way he is, because he is such a creative genius, and the pressure, as he keeps talking about, the diamond coming out your butt, literally, as he said tonight. So I'm starting to really feel for him and, be less judgmental, I think. So it's interesting.
I think to kind of go off of you saying how Michelle Williams has gotten better with every episode, I think it's because Gwen has become so much more an integral part of it in every episode too. I think the way that they're writing her and the way that they're showing us kind of like how important she was to so many things and all the levels that she's having to play in here of this woman who's still in love but out of love with this man, and it kind of touches on it too of like them being the only two in this kind of weird world of theirs that only they can understand. I think the notes that we're touching on for Gwen have been amazing, and I think from an artistic standpoint, the decision to have him do that set just all in black and white, smoking a cigarette to a silent crowd, I absolutely loved that choice.
Yeah, I really thought artistically this episode was amazing. They've done cool little artistic things throughout it, and I think this one being centered around Lenny Bruce and having that dark element was really crucial for him. And then I think Sam Rockwell just like he's been hitting home runs this entire series, but like this was like the most standout episode for him, in my opinion.
Yeah. Agreed.
So I really enjoyed watching him this episode. But let's start off with Bran and Gwen. and kind of their relationship, because it's a little bit rocky this episode, not in terms of like they're going to break up, but just we've only seen him as like this knight in shining armor compared to Bob this entire time. And this episode, he kind of is like, oh, well, you know what, you're going to be great. And he's still being really nice, but he's just letting her know, like, you don't have to take what he says. You have creative control, and you don't have to, worry about that, because you can say this and this and that. And she kind of gets a little defensive.
Which is weird, because I feel like the poor guy is just, trying to be a really nice husband. And I suppose at times he's probably a little, feels a little left out with the bond that that Bob and Vernon do have, because he's never going to have that with her. And he's a lot younger than her as well. And so it's just his way of being, protective and a good husband and trying to boost her up. But it backfires for him, because she obviously has a stronger relationship with Bob in that area and doesn't want him to be quashed out of it too early.
Yeah, I think that's like, he feels like that's all he can really offer, because he knows that there's like that, like that other side of her with Bob that like he can't replicate, and he doesn't quite understand either. So it's like this nice guy who just tries to even push harder and say like, no, you deserve this, you deserve that, which are all lovely things to say, but yeah, the way that it backfires is like it's always outsiders looking in with the two of them. I think
it's almost like your family. It's like when someone says something negative about your family, it's like, I can say something negative, but you can't.
Yeah.
Like you're supposed to just sit there and support me in whatever I say, but you're not allowed to have an opinion on this.
Yeah.
Almost like it's kind of came across in that way. But I mean, he is crucial. Like, and he's been in her life for a while, so I think it's important for him to like have a voice in certain things.
Absolutely. And I think it actually demonstrates how much he means to her, or how much he does not mean to her in that way. Because if he was really strong in her life and really, really like what she would see as equal, then I think she would be more receptive to that and be more for pro-Ron versus defending Bob. I don't know, for me it just shows that their relationship, she sees it as something that's valuable to her and she loves him, but that Bob is even more important to her.
I just almost wonder now, like it makes me think, because I haven't researched we talked about the person he's kind of representing in the show. Right. But it's like, is he just a really, really long rebound? Or is he someone that she's really into?
Well, apparently when I read about it, it was like he didn't have as strong as part of in her life as it's been portrayed. So I don't know how long he actually lasted.
Yeah, I think for like cinematic purposes, he's a great character, because it is that like complete juxtaposition from Bob. Yeah. So I think it would make sense if the showrunners and the writers were like, oh yeah, like even though this guy was maybe a shorter rebound, let's make him a really long one in the show, because it makes sense for everything she's going through with Bob to have that kind of person at home for her too during that.
Yeah. And I mean, within this sequence, we see him and her kind of being like husband, wifey, little family, making the spaghetti dinner, having celebration.
Thrown on the roof. I love that. I want to do that.
With Nicole, who I know I said it in the cold open, but the only reason I said that was because it's been 1 year, and they obviously have gotten a new actress to play Nicole for this episode, and the aging just seems like more than 1 year.
I was terrified when I saw her. I was like, who the hell's in their kitchen right now?
Yeah. She looked like she had a wig on as well. Like, that didn't look like her hair.
Like, last episode, I would have thought she was like maybe 8, 9, 10 at most. And this episode, she's like 15.
Yeah.
It was a weird choice, because she looked so different. Could they at least get someone that looked kind of like her?
Because didn't the last Nicole have brown?
Yeah, it was like
not that you can't dye your hair. But
yeah, it was a little bit more of like a
ginger.
dirty, yeah.
Again, like I'm totally fine with them recasting, because like kids do grow fast. It just seemed like too fast.
It's a
bit of a
stretch.
Too many freckles, too much blonde. Like I'm spitting, like I'm just like, what is happening? I actually Googled, did the actress die? The previous one, because I was like, what? Why such a dramatic change?
You went dark.
No, but I mean in real life.
I just figured they recast, because I was like, it's a year later, they needed someone to be a little older looking.
Well, hey, little known fact, they actually sold their daughter and bought a new one. I'm sorry, I'm jumping the gun on my special segment with true facts later.
Hey, and I'm just...
they may have had some faults. I don't think that was quite one of them.
I must have gotten that wrong.
I'm just in the
I need to learn to read one of these
online
days.
chat as well. And Jazzy is back, Jazz41173. Hi, she says, evening, ladies. And this episode felt mostly like a setup for the next.
Yeah, very
Good call.
true.
Yeah, thank you. Good call.
Oh, someone just said the other day, there's an actual name for what the episode before the penultimate episode is, and I can't remember what it was called. But that's what this episode is, because we have 2 more left.
Yes, 2 to go.
But past that, when Ron and Gwen are having one of their little kind of disagreements about, because Bob's in the hospital, that, you know, they need to replace him, and she's like, no one will ever replace him, because if we replace him, he'll die. And Nicole's overhearing all of this. So we kind of are seeing this. It's always hard being a child of divorce from, like, I have friends that I know have gone through it, and it's always hard, like, having parents that you're trying to please and having significant others come in, because it just adds a lot more to the equation than just 2 people, obviously. But it's even harder. That whole thing of, like, when parents talk and, like, they just assume the kids can't hear, and the kids always hear. But I don't know, how did you guys feel about when Gwen kind of goes in to talk to her, and it's like, she's obviously upset, but Gwen doesn't really address it at all.
Yeah, I think it felt kind of strange in the beginning, but then when we start to see her around Bob, like once he's in the hospital bed and everything, I feel like it started to come together of like, oh, I think now that she's a mature 27-year-old, as we've seen, she
She keeps aging.
is starting to understand.
First it was like 15, now it's 27.
now she's 27.
Next time we say her, she'll be 55.
Oh, yeah, she's already dead.
Told ya.
Kim called it. Predictions.
Oh my god.
I think she's starting to mature in a sense of understanding kind of who her dad is in a way. And so I think the pensiveness from her just kind of comes from like wanting to be a little bit standoffish, because I think she's starting to like connect the dots now that she's getting older.
Yes, it's interesting because I just saw her as repulsed by her father when he was lying there, and then to top it all off, having Anne there as well, and then her later comment to her mum. But just like she was afraid to connect with him, and whether she was repulsed by him or whether she was just, I don't know, in disdain.
I don't know if I took it as repulsion. I kind of viewed it in a slightly different way, as when you see somebody that you are close with and that you love and they're in such a state, it like you're almost in shock.
Yeah, yeah.
Like you don't know how to react. Like she's like, oh, kiss, and like Gwen's trying to make it seem like, oh, everything's fine, just go give him a kiss and a hug, and she's just like, everything's not fine.
Yeah. And or just disappoint. I don't know, like, you know, when you've got, I haven't had experience, but I can imagine if you had a sick parent or something who could potentially die, and you're mad at them, you're angry at them for getting themselves to that point. And I felt like she was a bit, you know, not disgust.
No, I mean, that might have been part of it. I agree with you on that. That maybe she's a little bit upset with him.
Yeah, like, serious? You're going to leave me? Like, what is this? And there's this girl here too? Like, what are you doing to my life? Like, child selfishness stuff.
And then we also see, you know, last episode, obviously, she was very buddy-buddy with Nicole. They were going swimming together. She was doing her hair. And then this episode, she has that line to Gwen saying, does it bug you that she's always around? Like, it seems like she might now be a little disdained of Nicole as well.
Well, it's interesting because I didn't feel that when she still smiled at Anne in the room, like she still was like, you know, hi, and this said, but then it was like I think she likes her, but then obviously to her mum, she's realizing, oh my gosh, if this was me, Mom, that's Dad's girlfriend. Like, how do you feel about that?
Maybe as she's getting older, she's realizing like how young she really is.
Yeah, and I think in that setting too, one of those moments where like something that's like life-threatening or life-altering that happens like that, maybe just kind of taking a step back of like, wait, I feel like it should be me, my mom, and my dad in this hospital room right now. Like, what are you doing
That's
here?
true. Well, let's take a second and thank those people who are on our live chat, like Jazzy.
Like Jazzy, who's going hard. She's like, I like Ron and his support of Gwen. And ironically, Gwen aged her up to visit him in hospital, which, we thought.
Yeah, that was a good
and she's saying, true, that Nicole seemed shell-shocked.
That was interesting. Sorry to divert a little bit, but they're saying that kids weren't allowed to be at the hospital.
Yeah, weird. Was that an old school rule?
Maybe.
Well, they're very dirty.
Tut.
Like the sick people in there. You don't need that.
True story.
But back to our fans.
I love that. It's awesome. Okay, so hey everyone. Before we just move on to the next topic, This is like a comedy show tonight. I'm very enjoying it. We just wanted to say thank you so much for making us the ESPN of TV talk. For us to continue to grow, though, we could use your help, as we keep mentioning. So if you're on YouTube right now, like Jazz in the live chat, can you please hit that thumbs up button and subscribe? And if you're on iTunes, please give us a 5-star rating. That would be amazing for Amy's future comedy career.
Yes, please. I need it.
But no matter where you are, just please leave us a comment so you can get involved in the conversation. Being part of AfterBuzz TV has meant so much to all of us, and we truly appreciate you supporting us in doing what we love. Can you tell? But don't forget to tell all your friends, and please keep enjoying our shows because we have many of them, including Game of Thrones.
Yes, we do.
Lots of conversation there.
Thank you guys so much. Like Kim said, we have shows across the board. If there's a show out there, we probably cover it here. So definitely go check out any other show that you are a fan of and support them too as you support us. We really do appreciate it. It gives us the ability to be lighthearted in these dark times, just like this episode did. I think that our panel right now is giving a pretty good parallel of that. You know,
I think so too.
this was a very dark episode being heightened by comedy. And I say comedy because he wasn't being funny. But we'll get into that.
But some of his lines were funny.
Some of them were.
Did like the diamond.
But let's talk about the actual person who's being portrayed, which is Lenny Bruce, because we start off the episode with Fosse working on this editing of the movie, which starred Dustin Hoffman, and he's being very overcritical again. Like we've seen this in the past. It's a reoccurring pattern of his where he can't let this go. He can't let this become a finished product. He keeps having to change things on it. And now he doesn't really have Gwen helping him out because Gwen's busy with Chicago and he's trying to split himself between both. And it's a lot as we see.
I think that's kind of like the nightmare situation for him where he's overloaded with too much work to do. He's not able to stop with really either, but is so focused on Lenny because of this weird, like, personal kind of dark connection that he has to it. But also on top of it, his health is starting to fail him, and Gwen isn't there to kind of hold his hand and hold him up and give advice on certain things.
And Anne is not that person.
Exactly.
Anne's the person that's like, spend more time with me, take less time for work.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's kind of like a perfect storm in this episode for him.
And I think we mentioned potentially last weekend or the one before that he had changed when it came to Anne, but no, he's with the receptionist or the
Yeah, I mean,
office
he's already back
assistant.
to cheating. He's already back to the drugs. It's 1 year after he got out of the, well, I guess not 1 year to the day, but like it's 1974, so it's somewhat after he has been released. But you know, he's already falling back into his old ways completely.
Yeah. Such a perfectionist though, isn't he? Like, I mean,
Well, it's like
downfall.
he doesn't have enough time for really either, but he seems like he's really more focused. At least they're portraying it like he's more focused on Lenny at this point. But
well, is that because it's 2 weeks to opening?
I mean,
you know, that's
and I
priority.
think it's also because Chicago's still, even though he's doing Chicago's Gwen's. Chicago is Gwen's dream. He's not as invested. He's going to do Chicago, but he's not as invested in Chicago. He's invested in Lenny.
And I think he really had something to prove with Lenny too, because it wasn't Damn Yankees. It wasn't, you know, like
It
he
wasn't
wasn't
a musical. It wasn't something that you could throw a dance over. It was something that was raw. So he's dealing with both of that. We go into the rehearsal. He's grasping his arm. He's hacking up a lung. Like he's in terrible shape. And like,
eating chocolate, breaking his shoelace, drinking Coca-Cola. That boy needs to go on a
throwing
good healthy
pills,
diet.
throwing pills back.
Throwing pills.
And Gwen's, you know, saying they're still trying to comfort him, still like, you know, saying like, oh, I'm sure that your film's fine. I'm sure like you're the one that's critical of it. Like no one else probably thinks it's bad.
She's so good as well, like even talking with the directors and producers or whoever those men were that visited them the first day.
Oh, she is an actress
She's
to
such a
a
good.
T.
She's isn't she? She's so good with words and placating others to make sure she's going to get the end result she wants and stalling them, and it's really cool.
But
Good
we're in this
skill set.
rehearsal and like he has to leave. He can't. He's literally going to cough up a lung. He can't stop hacking, and he ends up going to the hospital where he has this heart attack. And right before it, Gwen comes in and she's, you know, I liked that she said I'm his wife because I just wanted to touch on the moment that she legally is his wife. So she legally.
Oh, so she still was legally his wife?
They never divorced, I believe. I believe they stayed married until the
I was
day
going
he
to say,
died.
because 2 women in that hospital claimed to be his wife, right? So it was, who is?
I could be wrong, and Jazz, I'm sure, will correct me if
Jazz.
I'm wrong. But I believe he stayed married to Gwen until the day he died. So legally, she still is his wife, and legally, she still has like Anne doesn't have the rights to like necessarily be, she's not family, she's a girlfriend. But she comes in and he wants her to lie for him again. He's like, oh, I'm fine, like this and that, and like she won't lie for him this time. She's like, no, he's on all these drugs, like he's just trying to make light of it. Oh, like is work a drug, like and she's like, no, he's on all these drugs, he's on cocaine, like everything. He's not sleeping, he's doing all this, like, and he's kind of mad at her, but as that happens, he has a heart attack.
Yeah. I actually, this is terrible to say, but it's true. I actually thought it was quite funny when he was having a heart attack because he didn't seem to care or know, and he was just kept talking, and he's like, oh, shit.
I think that's such a representation of our culture, because even now, it's like people just avoid going to the doctor. Like, they will be on their deathbed trying, I'm fine.
Yep.
Like,
what about the guy, sorry, just when he's lying in the bed and the guy next door who wasn't fine, like moaning and groaning for his mother? Oh, that was hilarious.
But it's like, but it is that kind of thing where it's almost like if I don't accept this, it won't be happening and I can go back to work. Because I don't have the time for this to happen.
And or interestingly enough, the idea that when you're having a heart attack, you may have one and not even realize, because he didn't seem physically affected by it.
Well, they had him hooked up to the machines, so they could see the levels happening.
They could see
so he was in the best possible position to be having a heart attack.
Yeah. And you could just, I love the scene between the two of them there. Again, just like a time for Sam Rockwell and Michelle Williams to both shine, of their escalating argument while the doctor is kind of still examining him. And it just like, that whole scene was just like very like insane and intense.
Our producer Steph in the booth just told me that she looked it up, and Gwen and him were married until
and
his death.
So did Jazzy. She just said they were separated but never divorced. Woo! Thanks, team.
Yeah, Brie. Yeah, Jazz.
So then Anne gets to the hospital, and she wants to see him, and Gwen kind of like, she's the barrier, and she's like, you know what, he's asleep now, just why don't you go ahead home? I'm gonna stay here, you go home. And stuff. And Anne kind of throws that little thing in her face of, he should never have done Chicago.
Yeah, but I don't think she did that on purpose in a mean
I don't
way.
think that she meant to do it in mean ways, but I think that was the one thing for her to say to make Gwen pissed off almost.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's kind of like even in that beach house episode where it was like Anne kind of was the only pure one in that house of like wanting to look out just for his well-being, and that's it, like literally just for his health. And so I think this wasn't in a vindictive way.
No, I don't even think
that she was
realized
saying.
that
But it still like came off as something that like
It's
for
just
someone
like, it was just
Gwen
like
Verdon.
the minute she said that, and like Michelle Williams, the way she acted it with the response of just like her face just changed. Like she was being so sweet and nice, like, oh no, it's fine, and then I'm gonna stay here tonight. Like, it's almost like she doesn't want Anne to like go talk to him, or I don't know. It was just a weird kind of dynamic for me, and I was like, is she just upset with her because she's trying to get in the way of Chicago? Like, I was trying to figure out what was that intention.
I just think that Gwen sees her as, okay, you're Bob's little playgirl, you know, that's fine for all the fun, frivolous things, sex, etc. But when it comes to real world stuff, I'm the one in charge. I'm older. This is my deal.
I think even based on the beach episode, I think she might understand that she might be a little bit more, but when it does actually come to like real life something happening, she's like, no, you can't be right now.
Well, I think it's like
that's
Gwen kind of said it perfectly to Nicole when she said, after she asked about, does it bother you? She said, me and your father have something that no one else will ever have.
And that's very true. Yeah.
And I think honestly, this whole episode was kind of that, whether it was, you know, like her and Ron and him trying to have his part, or these scenes in the hospital, or even her just like fighting for him for the doctor. Like it was all kind of everyone's outside looking in on the two of them.
Well, and it was funny. It's funny because it's like you see this in other things too. Like I know Grey's Anatomy did an episode like this, and there's people who not necessarily aren't going to be your romantic partners in life, but that are in your life and almost more like, I don't want to say more important than your romantic partners, but that you just have this connection that you'll never have with anyone else.
I always used to think of my friends in different pods like that too. Like I'd have what I'd call my life friends, the ones that you can tell everything, trust completely. You'd have like your party friends, you'd have like your school friends, you'd have your dance friends, your theatre friends, and you go to different people to rely on for different things. And I think Bob and Gwen have that solid foundation of, in a way, like siblings. I know it's not, but that forever bond, no matter what you do to me, we need each other, we'll be here for each other. And so they're in that compartment together, which no one else can touch.
Which we know is true because they were together for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
So then she goes back in with Bob, and he he's like, I don't want people to know what happened. I want them to think that I'm just sick. Like, I just have a bug. And he wanted to get back to work. And she's like, no, you can't get back to work. Anne's going to come tomorrow. And he's like, no, I don't want her to see me like this. Because I think for Anne, he really wants to be
The macho man.
Yeah, I don't think he because maybe it's because she's so much younger than him. Like maybe he's like, I don't want her to see me aging.
Yeah.
That, and also I think because he's always felt like he's had a way with the starlets and stuff. So for one of them to see him as a decrepit old man who's sick and in bed, like, it's not good for his image, is it?
Yeah, I don't know that he would want any woman other than Gwen or Nicole to see him like that for that reason of like the legend of Bob Fosse, but especially the woman that he's dating that he already gets enough shit for dating someone who's so much younger than him anyways, but then to see him like that, that's like a whole other, I mean, for someone who has that running ego too, like that's just going to be such a blow.
Totally.
Yeah.
And Jazz was just saying she loved the scene when the doctor came in to ask for the autograph.
Yes, I was just about to get to that too. That was
Thought
such
Gwen
a good
was gonna
scene.
take him outside.
Because then we get this scene, which is this nice scene between Gwen and Bob where they're, in this room together and she's by his bedside. And as you said earlier, the guy's just moaning and moaning and moaning. And then this doctor the balls. The balls to walk in and doesn't even like recognize Gwen, but wants Bob Fosse's autograph. And then when she's like, I'm Gwen, he's like, of course you are. But she uses it to the advantage and she gets Bob his own room.
Absolutely. She's a clever lady.
But I was just like, I just could not believe the balls on that doctor. It's like, there's just, when you work at a place, there's a certain professional-ism that you have to have.
Honestly, weird, because I would maybe do that, as long as he's not dying of a heart attack at the time. Like,
I just don't think that's the time, though. Like,
Yeah,
maybe
like
on
maybe-
his checkout
Yeah, maybe
day.
when he's getting out, he's on his way out the door, be like, hey, glad you didn't die. Can you sign this for me, please?
in those
better?
words.
oh, man.
I don't know. I just feel like, those are just sensitive times. I don't know. I always try, especially with people that are celebrity, because they tend to not have a lot of, especially I guess more so nowadays than even then, but they don't have privacy. They never have they're always being bothered. I know Robin Williams, it was one of his things that because I grew up in San Francisco and he lived there, and he would often be in places and he never had a problem signing an autograph or taking a picture with you unless he was with his family. And then he's like, if I'm with my family, please respect that this is our time together and don't come asking for things.
I feel like this scene said a lot because right from the doctor coming in, it shows that he was under pressure from so many different areas, including just fans always. He just had a heart attack and there's someone coming in asking for an autograph. But then it also shows that Gwen is still, whether it's, during rehearsals, it's on stage, it's on set, she's still taking care of it. She's handling everything. She's being there for him. She's playing the cards right. She's being charismatic. And then it also shows that he's just kind of you're going to handle everything, obviously he couldn't really handle much right now, but he's kind of okay and understands that that's kind of her role. And he leans on her so much that that's where, when she's not there to help him, it is kind of when everything falls apart.
They really do need each other, don't they?
They do.
Yeah.
And then the last thing that we get with them too, is this scene where he has his own room, she's knitting, and she's kind of they're talking about the old times, and we get brought up that number that got cut in Damn Yankees, and he's always like, because the guy couldn't do it, and she goes, no, if that's the story you want to tell. And that's the first time though that because we never saw the number completely, and we always just kind of took his side on it because he said that it was them saying this and it was the guy that couldn't do it, and now we find out no, it really just wasn't a good number. But they have that kind of it's almost like that bond that came up again. You saw why they had loved each other. They had that kind of little moment with each other, and he asks her to be there when he wakes up from the surgery.
It's you looked at them together when she's got her feet on the bed, knitting or whatever she's doing. He's lying in there. They do really look like an old married couple, don't they? They should still be together. And they probably would have if he hadn't done his cheating gig.
Yeah.
Plural.
And then it's paralleled with him and Anne being together, because when she's in the hospital, it's just a different vibe. It's not this warm, loving, mutual appreciation vibe. It's she's there, and the first thing he says when he gets out of surgery, because he's so paranoid, and he's like, they put it in wrong, or they put something else in there. I died. so like all over the place, and she's like, no, you're not, like, everything's fine, and then he immediately wants her to have sex with him because he needs to make sure his penis works.
And or wasn't it because he kept having the flashbacks of the molestation and the sexual abuse, and he's like,
we're gonna get into the whole
screwed
flashback
up.
stuff and the thing, but it could be, but I think just for him, like, you know, whatever Anne was with him, you know, I'm sure he had feelings for her and he loved her in her own way, but it was just a different love, because like when you're sitting there with him and Gwen, it's like he respects Gwen. It's almost like he doesn't respect Anne that much, and it's like he's using her for this one thing, which she's trying not to do, because you just got out of surgery, dude. Like, maybe don't test your heart. Like,
Maybe don't have sex
He
immediately
never
after having a
learns.
heart attack.
he never learns, that man.
like, Jesus.
Yeah.
Like, and you just see her face, like, she's ashamed. And it's like, that is parallel.
I'd be ashamed doing it in hospital if a doctor could walk in any
Well, no,
second.
I mean, that's parallel. We'll get into the whole flashback in just a minute, but like, it is paralleled with, like, he's talking about being ashamed, you know, as a kid, and having these women do this, and it's like, now she's the kid, you know, in a way she's an adult, but she's very young, and like he's taking advantage of the situation and forcing her to do things that she doesn't really want to do, but she's gonna do.
Yeah, and I think it just shows how he kind of compartmentalized his women, essentially. You know, like Gwen
You're here for
had her
this, you're
purpose.
here
Your
for
purpose.
this.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I totally see it as, you know how we're talking about show romances previously, and how they're all whimsical and fanciful, and because it's in this a fantasy world, when you're in a show, you're on this heightened state of a reality, it's all fun and exciting. And I feel like every girl that he had through that was something that could never have true substance because it comes from that world, whereas I know with Gwen, it was originally through show business that they potentially met. Did they actually? They
Yep.
actually met, yeah.
It was Dan Yankees.
But there was something more solid, and it was a more of a real creation of a relationship versus his flings that turn into something. There's the bond there. It's real, whereas this is like a theater-based.
Yeah, and I mean, he did have
Relationship.
some sort of bond with her, because she also was with him till the end.
Yes, she
Yeah.
was.
Yeah. So he had
definitely
he definitely
do,
had something.
But
It
it's
just
not
wasn't
based on solid
It just
foundation.
wasn't the
It's
same
like,
thing that he had with Gwen, and what he
Yeah.
had with Gwen was bigger than anything he had with anyone else.
because they're like same age, him and Gwen, right? And so that makes more sense.
Similar
Whereas
age,
now
yeah.
he's like with the youngins, it's just fantasy.
And then the last thing we get with Anne too is the old man offering her a sandwich, saying we made an extra, being really sweet. But she's just so ashamed at this point, because she's in this hospital. She doesn't know what her role is. Gwen's kind of taking control, and she lies and says it's my husband, because you know, he is still married to Gwen. She can't be his wife. Legally, she can't.
I think that was kind of her moment of just realizing it. Like, this is my role. And even though she still ended up staying with him and there was something more than the sex there, I think it was her kind of realizing, yeah, even if this is more than sex, it's still never going to be what that is.
And we got that line, and I wrote it down because we were talking about it a little bit before, but where he says, what's the difference between applause and sex? And he said, you
Applause is
applaud
for-
people you love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's like directly as he's having sex with Anne, is this like moment of line of the flashback that we got, but it was just like, oh,
Yeah.
heartbreaking.
That one hit you.
So let's get into these flashbacks and this little dream sequence. So we had a lot of it's like him imagining himself almost like Lenny Bruce, but he's himself on stage, and he's telling these jokes, and I put air quotations for our audio listeners around jokes, because it's not very funny. A lot of it is just him telling these sad truths of his life, and then being like, what, guys, isn't it funny? And that's like a very comedian thing, right, Amy?
Yeah, because I mean, it's you take a point of view, you take things that are real, you take things that are dark, that are sad, that are depressing a lot of times, or even if they're not necessarily outwardly depressing to other people, something that is kind of like inside of you, and putting that funny narrative on it, or putting the spin on it, or, you know, it's you write what you know. And so I think these kind of dreamlike sequences for him were really interesting, the way that they didn't have anyone laughing. I think that was what stood out most to me, because it wasn't like, hey, I'm hitting you with a bunch of zingers. It was pretty dark. It was funny
It was
every
almost
once in
like
a while,
him
but it
being
was
like, what,
dark.
is my pain not funny to you guys? It was like that feeling.
Yeah, which was the connection to Lenny Bruce as well, because his humor was darker at times too, and it got darker as he went, but it was always like, there was always an emotional pain
We saw
to
that in
him.
the last episode of Marvelous Miss Maisel last season, when he's singing the All Alone song. It's like, when I watched that, I'm like, people are laughing in the audience. I'm like, this isn't funny.
Yeah.
This is sad.
And that was the case with a lot of it. And I think even from the beginning, I think it was towards the top of this episode, when Fosse mentioned how, like, no, we both came up in places like this, and, you know, like, it works. And it's true. Like, those are the kinds of places that Lenny Bruce would go up in all the time. So the parallels between the two are really interesting. So I'm glad that they kind of spent this episode dealing with, like, his health issues and the personal side of it, but also really bringing Lenny in very heavily to something that's otherwise been about his musical career, because that was obviously what he's known for in the majority of his career. But
yeah, no, it was they were really powerful moments, and then they were coupled with these flashbacks to his youth. You know, we see him, the instructor, being like, I'm going to take him and I'll take part of his cut because you guys can't afford to pay me for these lessons. And he's a great dancer, and he goes on the stage and he is a great dancer, but he's making not enough for his parents. Like, nothing is just, it got that coupling feeling of nothing's good enough for his dad. His mom's just sitting there being like, oh, I thought it would be more.
yeah, she kind of creeped me out a little.
Yeah, she was.
Yeah, she still smiled when the father said, you know, you got makeup on, you faggot. And she's just like,
Ugh.
Yeah,
that
that
word
was
is so hard
typical-
for me to hear.
It was a rough line, and then followed up by her just kind of like smile.
Like,
But I mean, you think about the different time period too, and like
Absolutely,
people
the
probably
woman
said
wouldn't say
that
anything.
a lot.
Yeah.
You know, it's like it was not. Nowadays, we're like, oh my god, and like but yeah.
And
watching-
also, I mean, it could have even hurt her. Who knows? But
but she was.
you can't-
oh, I
smiling,
think
she
it
was-
did.
can't say anything
for
about it,
sure
yeah.
it would have. As a mother.
And then and then we get to the moment which we had talked about last episode, which was these older women, these strippers, having sex with him, and he's 13 years old. And we get the line, you know, what do you call having sex with a grown woman when you're 13? You get to feel pleasure, confusion, and humiliation all at the same time. And that line was just so intense for me to hear, because it's like we all got that impression from last episode as we talked about,
That it was a cool thing. You know, a joke.
but we all got that impression that it really wasn't
Yeah,
a cool
yeah.
thing with him, but he's gonna play it off like it's a cool thing.
I'm glad they circled back to it in this, to kind of like really see what led up to that and kind of where he was at,
Yeah.
rather than just like that quick moment where it left you feeling that way. But I'm glad they really circled back to touch on it in this one.
It's I think it's great to bring to the forefront sexual abuse from a man's perspective as well. It's because obviously many times it's talking about from a woman's, and especially in theatre as well, because obviously in theatre we have just a whole bunch of interesting eclectic mix of people, and that stuff does go down quite a lot in theatres as well. So it's interesting.
And I like
was
that we're
brought
getting
to
that.
the
We're like that
forefront.
we're getting also that the last episode where he's telling him it's such a great thing, because it's like that's such like a male culture thing where it's like you're not allowed to almost say having sex with someone is a bad thing, that you didn't
For a
enjoy
man,
it
for a guy, yeah.
And especially in that time period, like it's heightened then even, but it still exists today. So I'm glad that they're bringing that to light as well. And then the last thing we get with these flashbacks is he gets the light, which the light on a stage for an audition or for a comedian is get off stage. You're done. And I thought that was also a very powerful moment to be. It's almost like
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah, I think that was going along with like how cinematically beautiful this episode was, to have so much like meaning packed into everything that he was doing, the parallels with Lenny, what was going on in his real life at that time, and then for at the end for him to just get the light. It's like,
It's definitely
You're
a
done.
theatre show for thespians, this one, isn't
Yeah.
it? Like,
Yeah.
ticking
Yeah.
all the boxes.
Yeah.
I love it.
yeah, so this was definitely a very powerful episode, and that's kind of where we're going to end off. So let's get into some of our special segments. First off, we have our Fosse Fun Facts brought to us by Amy. Amy, you want to let them know a little bit about what you're going to tell us?
yeah, some Fosse fun facts. That's what I'm going to tell you. I don't know why that was so aggressive, but I'm going to tell you. So normally we've been pulling from Slate, which has been awesome because they've been doing kind of like fact versus fiction. So I encourage you to check those out for previous episodes. I think this one, this one definitely kind of stayed more in like this fantasy world. So I think this was a hard one to kind of say, oh, this happened, this didn't, because of what was going on. But I did pull up from thefamouspeople.com a little bit about Fosse's childhood and early life. So a bit about his parents that we were talking about in that in their flashbacks. But Robert Louis Bob Fosse was born to Sarah Alice Fosse and Cyril K. Fosse in Chicago, Illinois. He was the second youngest of the 6 children born to the couple, which I thought was interesting too, because you did have that scene really quickly where he just says, I'm going to be a professional dancer, to his one sister there who was really excited, but a big family initially. In his initial years as a dancer, he teamed up with Charles Grass under the association the Riff Brothers. The duo toured around America and made money with their acts. He was then placed in a variety show, Tough Situation. So you still got to see like little moments of his childhood in there that they sprinkled in. But I do think that it was interesting because so much of the series up until this episode has been very heavy on wait, did that really happen or did it not? Because it's been so much about their careers and their lives, and this one kind of went off into this dream sequence, and then also in their flashbacks. So there wasn't as much to dissect in this, but
Quick
still
thing, Amy.
Yeah.
I just pulled up an article from Vanity Fair. There was some tie along with kind of historically what happened when Fosse was directing Lenny the movie in real life with Dustin Hoffman. Dustin Hoffman said that he was like impossible to work with, but that process where he got overworked with doing Chicago as well was real. And being in the hospital, he actually would have sex with a bunch of women, and like the hospital would just be like, what the heck is happening?
Wow.
And that inspired him to write All That Jazz, which is his semi-autobiographical film.
Yeah, this episode definitely had a lot of all that jazz feeling to it, and I encourage everybody, if you're loving this show, definitely check that out, because it is a amazing movie to watch, and it'll really help you understand the show a lot better.
And I think especially as it goes, because even this felt like a lead up to something more about that because of how he felt about himself. But that's interesting about Dustin Hoffman too, which you could kind of see in this episode, even just that small line of him looking at scenes and being like, I should have just played him. Like that was a very Fosse, like he was a control freak over things, but especially if him and Dustin Hoffman were.
We know he always wanted to be the star, so that really played up to that.
Yeah.
Let's get into some news and gossip. Thank you for that, Amy.
Let's do it.
AfterBuzz
So,
TV News.
Kim, what do we got?
Okay, so quick fire. So this is hilarious that I've written this down, yet my opinion about this earlier was the opposite when I've done it myself, written the truth here. Just firstly, they were talking about with Nicole Fosse, real life Nicole Fosse, and she kept talking about how much love there actually was within the family unit. Shock horror. So how much love she had for both of her parents. So me saying before that, even though I wrote that down, that she potentially looked at him like she didn't like him when he was in hospital bed, wasn't true. And they're just loving the family in general between all three, which is nice. I think that's
I
nice.
still think you could have been right, though, because even if you love someone, like we said, like that could lead to you being upset with them for
That's true.
potentially not being in your life,
True,
like
true,
giving
true.
themselves to a point for that.
The other one was just interesting. So when we saw the rehearsals for Chicago, and we had Cheetah Rivera, I think is how you
Yes.
pronounce her name, obviously. Val McCulley, obviously. Just a little background of people who don't know. So she is obviously an incredible musical theatre artiste, actress, dancer from years gone by. She hosted the Tonys in 1999. She's won numerous Tony Awards.
I think she was just honored either at the Emmys or something.
For
not too
the
long ago, right?
Long Lifetime Achievement
Yes.
winner, 2018 Tonys. But she got nominated way back in the beginning, 1961, Bye Bye Birdie. Then Chicago nomination she got in 1976 for Best Actress, nomination not win. But here's fun fact. So apparently in real life, when the day that Bob had his heart attack, what actually happened was Gwen was in the rehearsal studio learning how to crochet, or not crochet, crochet. I was a crochet, shit. Crochet for the scene in Chicago when she's in the court scene where, you know, she's pretending to cry and stuff. Anyway, apparently she was learning how to do that. Somebody came in and said to her, Bob has had a heart attack. They took her out, and then everyone was told basically straight away, you're out of a job. And so her and some of the castmates, they were like, oh, well, let's just go to Bloomingdale's. So they went shopping for the afternoon.
Oh,
Fun fact. That's great.
all right. We are about out of time, but I think let's just do a really quick rapid fire prediction segment.
Your AfterBuzz TV predictions.
It's okay, Amy. Do you want to start? I think Kim.
I think we're gonna dive right into like the heart of Chicago in the next episode. I think it's gonna pick up from like either the show's already been running for a minute or like they're about to open. Like it's really gonna dive kind of headfirst into Chicago for the next one.
Oh my goodness. Hallelujah. I can't wait to see the Chicago goodness.
Yes.
Done.
I agree with you. I think next week is going to be very much Chicago. It's called Nowadays, which is a song from Chicago. So I think 100% you're right. And then I think the last episode will deal with all that jazz and his death.
Yep.
Done.
Done. All right, guys. Thank you so much for being with us here today. We will be back next week. But until then, Kim, where can they find you across the board?
Yeah, absolutely. You can all find me on all my social media at Kim Davey Live.
And quick shout out because the theater and comedy worlds both lost gems this week, Doris Day and Tim Conway.
Yep.
So very sad for the theater and comedy worlds, but man, did they give us some good stuff over the
so
years.
good.
So thank you to Doris Day and Tim Conway. And you can find me at Amy Maestri on Twitter and Instagram.
And you guys can find me at BRI_Phipps, PHIPBS on Twitter and Instagram. And just a couple quick shout outs to people that left us reviews. Shout out to, I'm sorry if I butcher your name, Letahana Urbana, who left us a comment on our video last week that was really sweet, saying that she loves us and she loves the show, that we're doing it, and that her mom introduced her to Gwen. Her mom actually just passed away on May 11th. So we're here for you. We're so sorry to hear that news, and I'm so glad that this show is helping, you know, that your mom brought you in with that, and that you can kind of have this show to keep you going with that. And then also to the other Captain America who gave us a 5-star rating on iTunes. Thank you so much. We got a couple 5-star ratings on iTunes, but again, if you don't leave a comment, I can't tell that you have. So if you do, please leave just an even short little quick comment and I'll shout you out on the show. Until next week, guys, we'll see you then.
Bye.
Our founder, Keven Undergaro, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
Views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.